I got a fire in my belly, you can see it in my eyes, inspired by the many who could reach for the skies, or light up the room in the dark with the vibrance of youth, stay wise to the truth in your heart. See, I used to think of prophets as Gandalf-esque characters with long white beards, brown camel hair robes, held close by maybe a piece of rope tied around their waist, a big shepherd's crook held in one hand, and a stony expression on their face. Angry dudes, ready to condemn everybody to hell if they failed to meet the demands of a very angry God. And that's my Western Protestant Christian Sunday school image of an old school Old Testament prophet. An angry fortune teller, pointing out how bad everyone was and how angry God must be and how bad the outcome was going to be if people didn't pull up their socks. I used to get caught up believing anything that was truly spiritual, people with real connections with the divine, who could speak the word of God and specifically had the gift of fortune telling the future, like these prophets in my mind, were an extinct breed. They were certainly the only people worthy of being recognized as prophets in the churches that I grew up in. I didn't know anybody who fit the stereotypical image of a prophet in our local community. Though there was a homeless dude who had a piece of rope tied around his waist to keep his jeans up. But I did like to imagine that our dressing gowns were a similar style of attire to maybe the Old Testament prophets. And maybe one day, if I wore my dressing gown and prayed just right, I too could receive prophetic insights. The word prophet from the Greek translates two parts. The first part, pro, meaning toward, and the second part, phet, is to say. So effectively it's toward saying or forward telling, forward speaking. And since Sunday school, I've learnt that it's not so much that the prophet is a fortune teller or telling the future through some sort of divine insights. It's that they are speaking the future into existence by pointing to an alternative reality. And the world is full of prophets. People who rally for action to reduce the impact of things like climate change. People who speak out on behalf of the voiceless for equality. Basically anybody with a message pointing towards a better future, to restoring the dignity of a disadvantaged person, group, country, or even the environment, is exercising their prophetic voice. The verse I read at the start of this podcast is a verse from the Fundamentals song Deja Vu, written by Tucker, and it's a prime example of today's prophetic speech. So to me, the most profound prophets of our present day are the artists making music, and particularly those in the hip-hop scene. Something transcendent seems to happen when an artist captures an idea in rhythm, rhyme, and flow that paves a path between the head and the heart of the listener. It sends a shiver through your body from head to toe when you hear words that offer a glimpse of the divine reality. To me, the best artists are the ones whose words resonate with the lives of the listener. They pick us up from the depths of our despair and they point us back to the light. Because nothing changes unless we ourselves are first transformed. It takes transformed people to transform other people, who in turn transform societies, cultures, institutions, and slowly the patterns of behaviour begin to shift. And we begin to usher in a whole new way of being. I find it really interesting that even in Old Testament times, just as it seems to be now, the prophetic voice often stands outside of the political, religious, and educational institutions, outside of the temple gates, in the streets, out in the wilderness. The prophet never needed the validation of the tribe or the institution to do their thing. They simply spoke their truth from an uninhibited vantage point. The priests and the teachers, on the other hand, They have to toe the line. They're bound by the creeds, the dogma, and the canons of the institution because their paycheck depends on it. And this can lead to an extremely fixed history or past-focused perspective of the world. And nothing new changes from this perspective. The prophet, on the other hand, goes out into the wilderness, meets God there, and comes back speaking the word that will drive us forward towards a better future. So now go listen to some hip-hop, maybe some fundamentals, and really listen. Because that could just be the key to changing our hearts and the key to changing the world.